Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Half and Half this morning. We are back with a new series. We're talking about doing working with breath for a few weeks here in the next couple weeks. And I thought it would be nice to start with a sense of just kind of our natural breath. What are your natural habits with breath? What is your body already doing for you with breath when you're moving? So I'm going to tell a small story that won't get too gory, but one of the things that happened to me last Saturday, a week ago, is I was cutting some kale and we just sharpened our knife. And now you already know what happened, right? Like I cut a chunk of my thumb off, like thumbnail and thumb, and a little bit. You can see a little bandage here. Everything's fine. But there was a quick trick to the emergency room. And I did need like a clotting agent because I cut basically off at a nerve in a vessel. Um, and what has been so amazing to me all week long is like how amazing the body is. Like it's all just growing back. I mean, basically, it just took a bandage and Vaseline, and it's just all this skin is growing back, and my thumb skin will just probably look totally like a normal thumb. So I think I've just been kind of marveling all week every time I look at it and it's a little bit better and a little bit better. Like, it's just bodies are just, they're so smart and there's so much they do all the time that we have nothing to do with. And, Scott and I are both teachers of the body and teachers of movement. We spend a lot of time thinking about all these different things and how we should do things and correcting things. And it's fine. It's good. It's really educational. It's really helpful to understand your body more. But also, a lot of what we're thinking about is trying to get out of the way of what your body already knows how to do. Like, how do we support what your body already knows how to do well? And also, how do we get out of the way when things are going just fine and not mess with things, which is another part of the story when I tried to pull the bandage off too soon, right? Like, sometimes we interfere because we just like to fix things. So that's kind of where my mind is today. Working with the breath and just like finding out what's working in your body, how it's working, and really noticing when your thinking mind sort of gets in the way of your breathing. Um, or what are your patterns around breath? A lot of times when we talk about breath, we are very particularly trying to do it a certain way. And we'll do that in the coming weeks. We'll talk about making little tweaks to the breath, but today we'll just work with observing the breath, noticing your patterns, and feeling what works for you. So let's go on to your back. Knees bent, feet flat. And for a moment, just categorize what you already know about your breath. What are the things you know about breathing? What's useful about it? Maybe what mechanics you know, or maybe even sort of poetically or emotionally, how do you relate to your breath? And then, that's just kind of just a thought pattern. Let some of that go and start to observe what you naturally do. And this is all across the board for people. Some people naturally breathe way up in their chest. Some people naturally breathe in their belly. Some people might feel more one side than the other, front, back. See if you can observe what you naturally do without changing it. And you might observe with all your senses. So, how does it feel moving into your torso and out of your torso? What things move indirectly as you inhale and exhale. How do you visualize the breath? Do you visualize the breath as it moves in and out? What's the sound to it? Again, you don't have to force a sound. And then last sense isn't sort of a traditional sense, but how does it feel to observe the breath? And again, this can go all over the map. Some people feel calmed immediately. Some people feel bored. Some people feel really anxious when they start observing their breath. And all of those can be fine. Although anxious is a little tricky because anxious can be so distracting. So if you find yourself getting very anxious and tense, and you need a little help with that, then just kind of back off generally and feel your whole body. And just let yourself be. Maybe open your eyes. Sometimes that's helpful. And then we're going to do some matching movement to breath. So we're going to do knee folds. You know knee folds. One leg comes up on the inhale. It goes down on the exhale. Other leg comes up on the inhale. It goes down on the exhale. And you probably have a rhythm that your body's really used to. Maybe it's the rhythm you've heard me say over and over again. We're going to see if you can use your breath rhythm. And that might change a lot of things. So if I have a really quick breath rhythm going, then I might have a really quick movement. Alternately, I might have a really small movement. I might just only make it up a little bit with the inhale and down with the exhale. Either of those would be fine. If I have a real slow breath rhythm, then I might have a really slow movement, or I might have a pause before going back down. Play with it a little bit, see what it's like for you. Your inhale is the up movement, your exhale is the down movement. And seeing if you can create some harmony between your movement and your breath. They're working together, they're finding kind of the groove of matching the movement and the breath. You might find the movement changes your breath a little bit. You suddenly have a little fuller breath, or slower, or quicker. All those things can happen. Allow yourself to follow that. Last set, finishing up this set. And then with both feet down, a couple breaths. And there's probably, for a lot of people, an urge to just kind of look up and see what's happening. See if you can look in and just observe your breath for a couple breaths. And we'll take your hands behind your head, elbows a little lifted off the mat. Mini crunch. Again, if you've been doing these classes, you know mini crunch has a breath rhythm to it. But if you're not sure, watch the first one or listen to the first one. It's going to be an exhale to bring your head off the floor. And then you stay in place for the inhale. The second exhale just drops you a little deeper into the movement, maybe pulls you a little farther up. And then it's an inhale to go back down. An exhale on the floor. You get another inhale on the floor. And the exhale brings you up again. You have a whole breath cycle with the head lifted. An inhale to go down, and then a whole exhale inhale with the head down. So again, you might be a lot faster than me. I tend to be on the slower side, but some of you are probably slower than I am too. Just see if you can follow your breath and what happens if you follow it with your breath. Allow the breath to lead, but also see if you can, let the movement affect the breath if that happens naturally as well. And they start to connect to each other. And take a couple more like this. Maybe you've noticed a couple habits you have. Last time through. Once you finish, take your arms down again. And then I'm going to come up to sitting. You can stay on your back if you want, or position yourself to look at your screen for a moment. I'm going to talk for a second. So I'll tell you one of the things I noticed in doing that exercise, which I've done 100,000 times by now, probably. But I noticed as I get to the mat and I take that exhale and inhale, my mind starts racing. Well, I have to do the next one. That was interesting. And I often cut the inhale really short because I want that exhale inhale to go faster. I also notice the inhale where I come up and I hold it for a moment and take an inhale. I often cut that inhale just a little short. All right. That was kind of interesting to notice too. Doesn't mean you always have to do the exercise like this, but for the theme today, it was just very interesting. Like, oh, I probably cut that inhale short because it's hard to hold my head up there. But if I really pay attention to my breath, it's not really that hard to hold it up there. Get a full breath. Next exhale, let me come up a little higher. So those are the kinds of things you might notice. It's not right or wrong. It's just like, oh, isn't that interesting that that was happening? And actually, the breath really supported the movement. It wasn't really that hard to hold my head up there for just a little longer and get a full breath. It gave me a more powerful exhale, and that connected me more to my belly. So that's one thing. And I bring this up because we're going to check out the 100. And the 100 is really interesting. It basically is a breathing exercise. I know everybody thinks it's an abdominal exercise, which it is. A lot of people think it's a strain your neck exercise, right? We have a lot of feelings about the 100. But the 100 is a breathing exercise. That was really the whole point of the 100, was to connect your breath to your belly and to get these full inhales and exhale. So you have these 5 pumps, inhaling for 5, exhaling for 5. People are often like, why 5? And why are you flapping your arms and all this stuff? And I think there's a number of reasons, but I feel like Joe Pilates in general, the reason he took it to 5 is because we always go to 4. And his thought was like, one more, try one more and see what happens to get just a little fuller breath, which I think is kind of interesting, right? Like interfere a little bit with your pattern. Natural breath, though, we're sort of flipping that, right? Like, oh, but we're not going to interfere today. We're going to do natural breath. So when I first started really trying to unpack the breath in the 100, one of the things I started doing was counting whatever my breath was. And so if I naturally really only made it to 3, then I started doing 3 counts inhale, 3 counts exhale. And I kind of shifted those pumps a little bit to match whatever my natural breathing was, maybe 4 counts each time. So I'm going to just kind of let my breath go, full inhale, full exhale, and then just see how many pumps I actually get. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 5. Maybe it's 6, but then maybe you could also just slow your pumps down a little bit if you're getting that many pumps in on your inhale. But see if you can find a rhythm in your breath that has the same count inhale to exhale. So it's not 6 counts in and 2 counts out, right? You're finding that rhythm that's the same. And then just follow about how many pumps do you naturally get? 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there as you go. I'm going to see if I can do it with a kitten. That's a new interference. We'll throw the toy out. That was easy. All right, so you know your 100. One hand behind your head is a possibility, head down is a possibility, or both hands is a possibility. So we're going to start with knees in tabletop, legs together, or however you like to hold your legs. We'll take an exhale to come up. And without pumping, just check out your breath rhythm here. What tends to be natural? And then as you're ready, add the pumps in. At your pace. And maybe you feel like me that breath can actually support the movement, especially the inhale. If it keeps going, it's possible to help you up. And we'll do just a couple more rounds here. And rest everything down. And the other thing that happens for me after doing abdominal work with a breath like that, I very often lay down and I take a big old breath through my chest. It feels great because I haven't been able to for a while as I was working that way. So maybe that happens to you too. That's just fine. And let your body recover in however it feels natural, what way, whatever way it feels natural. And then bring yourself up to sitting. So let's move into rolling up and down. Right leg straight out, left knee bent, round spine, holding on to the back of your leg. And then tip your weight back just a little bit. So we'll play with an inhale, exhale to go back, an inhale, exhale to come up. Now, that might be halfway back, that might be all the way back. It might be inhale back, hold it in place as you exhale, hold it in place to inhale, exhale up. Or it might be inhale back, exhale the rest of the way down. Inhale up, exhale the rest of the way up. So again, play with your breath. What tends to happen for you as you go? And allow the breath to initiate. A lot of times we lift the head just a little before we inhale. Do the opposite. Inhale just a little before you lift the head. Exhale a little before you get that heavy leg press up. And then just observe what happens. What are your habits? Let's try one more round. And switching the legs, left leg forward, right knee bent, round spine, tip your weight back just a little. And if you find it hard to do this down and up, then just stay in place for a couple and just find your breath. Once you find your breath, add a little movement. Once that's clear, then, let it come together, let it evolve. And last time, finishing sitting up. All right. So how was that one for you? I'll tell you again, I was noticing that mini crunch, how I talked about not always getting a full inhale when I hold it in place. I was noticing how it affected this exercise as well. That as I inhaled, I often stopped a little short with the inhale. I actually had a lot more inhale in me. And I found my upper back opened a little bit more before I needed an exhale. So that was kind of cool how those two things went together. Relatedly, one thing I see a lot in this exercise, especially if it's pretty hard one for people, and it is for a lot of people, is coming to this inhale here and then exhaling everything here. There's nothing left. All the exhale's gone. Just fastest exhale I can do, right? Then my breath is stuck and I'm holding my breath and I'm just like pulling really hard to get up. So one of the things we're looking at in the roll up is like, what if we kept the breath a little more natural? It's not that I don't want to exhale, but I don't have to force all the air out right away. And if I do, if I'm really that stuck there, then probably halfway back is more useful, especially for this exploration, right? If we're just trying to get like a lot of heavy core work. Maybe we're trying to push ourselves a little bit. That's different. But for this, playing with, can I keep just kind of an even breath, just a natural breath as I go? So we're going to go into the roll up, both legs. This one is especially hard. You want to go back to that one leg? Go ahead and do that. That's fine as well. But we'll start the same, knees bent, feet flat, feet flexed, round spine, and then either hands on your legs or arms reaching forward. And then that same breath pattern. If you're going halfway down, you have that pause in the middle. If you're going all the way down, you take a full breath to go down. And then a full breath to come up. And allowing your exhale to have its natural kind of long rhythm as you go. And I'll do a halfway down just in case you're curious. Hold it here. Hold it here again. And then exhale forward. Let's take a couple more. Last one down and up. All right. So let's try a couple things on your side. Lying on your left side, feet a little forward towards the front edge of the mat. You can have your head all the way down on your arm. Maybe a kitten is moving towards you, or maybe that's just me. She does like to help. I'm just going to groom my new haircut, right? Gonna check that out. All right, so one leg on top of the other. I've got a little bit of lift in my waist on the left side. Now, what's it like to lie on your side and breathe? It's kind of a different experience. Take a moment, see what that's like. For me, I really notice I notice the upside a little more, like this side moves a little more. And I kind of notice my back ribs a little bit more. It seems like they move a little more. You might have that experience. You might have a different experience. Yeah. Maybe production will help. We'll get a toy for the kitten. Yeah. All right. Now that you've got that going, we're going to take your top leg, your right leg up a little bit. We're going to match the breath and the movement, just like we've been doing. You're going to take an inhale forward and an exhale back. And see if you can let the breath initiate the movement and exhale. And so again, sometimes we go into like, ooh, deep breathing, deep breathing. That's maybe not the greatest when you're trying to keep your abdominals working, right? So natural, not overdone. So you can still support with your abdominals. Find the rhythm. Two more. Bring your legs together. Push yourself to your hands and knees. And let's go to the other side. Feet are at the front edge of your mat. Torso's lined up with the back edge of your mat. Find a little bit of work, a little bit of lift in your right waist. So you've lined everything up. Take a moment on this side. What does your breath feel like when you're lying on this side? Where does it tend to go? And then, like I said, if it's all tending to naturally go into your belly, well, maybe interfere with that just a little bit so that we get some support when we start moving the leg. Doesn't mean your belly can't move at all, but see if you can keep a little support and see what happens in your breath. Maybe it just makes the breath a little smaller, or maybe it moves it a little more into the ribs. Once you've got that, we'll lift the top leg a little bit and then let the breath and the movement find each other. Breath initiating just a little before the movement. 2 more times. Inhale, exhale. And bring everything together. And come back up to sitting. All right. Well, I can see Scott all ready to go. There's going to be a kitten trade-off. Oh, yeah. And maybe a production trade-off and a teaching trade-off.
Hey there, everybody. So I really appreciate the focus on authentic breathing. And let's continue that trajectory, making some movement. So start by stepping your feet wide apart. From your hip sockets, turning both legs out. And with that sense of your breath as it naturally is, with the out breath, triple flexion. Ankles, hips, and knees. And then with the inhale, come on up. Down with the out breath. Up with the in breath. And just as Collette was speaking of earlier, maybe your movement is faster than mine. Maybe it's slower than mine. And I first encountered this approach to the breath in the years I spent studying with yoga master BKS Iyengar. And he was really kind of an outlier, inviting students to breathe, to not hold their breath, but to resist the temptation to over-control the breathing. Let the breath come and go. Really, it was a practice of trusting your body. Let's do one more down and up, trusting your body knows how to breathe. Then turn both feet back to the front. Turn your left foot in, right foot out. And the same sensibility. Match your movement to your breath. Match your movement to your breath. Exhale. Inhale. Especially in the early years for Iyengar, people were highly critical. They're like, yoga is about the breathing. And who is this guy saying, don't control your breathing, just don't hold your breath? But I think he really understood Westerners, because we very often tend to over-control things, which can be a source of anxiety. So last couple here, let your breathing come and go, whether fast or slow, shallow or deep, and match your movement to the breath. Then turn both feet back to the front. Second side, right foot in, left foot out. So I love this movement because it's so good for mobilizing the hips, mobilizing the ankles and the knees. And it's a great opportunity to explore awareness of your breath, resisting the temptation to over-control your breathing, and the mindful practice of synchronizing movement to the authentic natural breath. One more, down and up. Then turn both feet back to the front. Same approach to the breath. And now with your knees more or less straight, lift your pelvic crest up to the ceiling. Let that lift then, lift your sternum. And let that lifting continue into your chin. Open up your throat. So distance from pubic bone to throat increases. And then keeping that length as you fold from your hip sockets. Then inevitably you hit the end range of the hip movement. Then let your spine round, just like you worked on a little bit earlier with the roll up and the roll down. Let your spine round. Let the crown of your head hang to the floor. Hands could come either to your shins or to the floor. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that in this position here, that your breathing is different, whether slow or fast, shallow or deep. Let it be. And then slowly reach the crown of your head forward. See if you can keep your neck long as you do so that most of the movement occurs between your shoulder blades. A few breaths here. And then step your feet back to yoga pose, head down dog. Same authentic breath. And then come on down to your knees and then onto your back. So on your back, knees bent, feet flat on the floor. So you might be looking at this going, wait a minute, this is deja vu all over again. We are going to reprise the mini crunch. Start by interlacing your hands. Bring your hands behind your head. So all the same cues, all the same techniques. And this time add a little bit of spinal traction. Use your arms to draw the back of your head away from your tailbone. Use your arms not just lengthen your neck, but also to create elongation in your spine between your shoulder blades and elongation in your lower back. And so keeping that sense of tractioning, that sense of lengthening, as you lift your head up, just like you did before. Keep that sense of lengthening as your head continues to lift and then your shoulders lift. And breathe. So now in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to roll the spine down segment by segment. And as you do so, see if each segment can land a little bit farther away from your tailbone so that the process of lowering down is a further elongation of your spine. Segment by segment, lengthening, lengthening, lengthening. Then release your hands, rest the back of your head on the floor. So if all went according to plan, your spine may be, as much as an inch, inch and a half longer than it was before. Results do vary, content settle during shipping. Let's try it again. Interlace your hands. Bring your hands behind your head. Gently traction your spine. Keep that tractioning as you roll up. Few breaths with your head and shoulders lifted. And then keep breathing as you roll down, placing each spinal segment in lengthening. All right. So then making your way to hands and knees. And then from hands and knees to yoga pose, head down dog. Now here's another opportunity to elongate the spine. So to do so, look back at your thighs and see that wall back there? Move your thigh bones toward that wall back there. Then at the same time as your thighs move back toward that wall, Then reach the crown of your head forward toward your thumbs. Thighs back, head forward to lengthen your lower back. Create more length between your shoulder blades. And in particular, to release your neck, to elongate your neck. And then come on down to your knees and down into sitting. So your choice how you sit, whether crossed legs or sitting as I am, and more than likely how you're breathing right now, your natural breathing. A little bit different than it was 5-6 minutes ago. But please keep in mind that this natural breath, natural breathing, is not something that's fixed that we can put on a shelf to look at, but it's constantly changing, constantly adapting. Now, the movement we're going to do in a few moments, for many people, impacts their breathing, changes the breath. So this is a moment by moment, present moment meditation. So aware of your breathing as it is, as you transition to hands and knees. Aware of your breathing as it is, as you turn your toes under. And aware of your breathing as it naturally is, as you lift your knees. Pull your thigh bones back toward that wall behind you. And at the same time, reach the crown of your head forward toward your thumbs. Now, forthcoming movement as best you can, originating from between your shoulder blades. Keep your neck long. As you look more and more forward toward your thumbs, thoracic extension. So I don't know about you, but in my body, this movement feels kind of good. And I notice that my breathing shifts quite substantially the longer time I hold here. Natural breathing, as we hold for kind of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and come on down. Then returning to sitting, this time in crossed legs. More than likely, your breath now is a little bit different than it was a minute or two ago. One of the really profound lessons, techniques I learned from Mr. Iyengar, to be aware of the breathing, resisting the temptation to overregulate it. So now let's do a twisting movement. Twisting to your right. Bring your left hand across, right hand behind. And maybe this movement does little, if anything, to your breath. Or maybe this movement influences your breath. Yeah, what do you think, Biddy? Couple more breaths here, whether fast or slow, shallow or deep. And then back in toward the middle. And twisting to the other side. Right hand across, left hand behind. Now, we can't necessarily assume that the influence of the twist on the breath is the same right side to left side. The two lungs are different size. Right lung is bigger than left lung. In your abdominal cavity, you have a liver on one side, a stomach and a spleen on the other. Ascending colon on one side, descending colon on the other side. And the placement of the organs is for sure going to influence how you breathe when you move your body. Couple more breaths here. And back in toward the middle. So all that to say is that your breathing, your natural breath, maybe it's the same turning one side or turning the other side. We can't necessarily assume that's the case. Now I have a kitten, so I'm not going to change my leg cross, but I encourage you to do so. Have the other leg now in front. Aware of your breathing as it is. And it's like we're scientists. We're going to do an experiment. Twist to your right, twist to the first side. And like a scientist will observe your breath, the rate of your breathing, the depth of your breathing, the quality of your breath when you turn to this side. And turning back to the middle. And then like a somatic scientist, twisting to the other side. So maybe the breathing is the same. Maybe it's unchanged. Or maybe it changes exactly the same, twisting one side as it does twisting to the other side. Now I observe in my body, might be different results for different people. Then when I twist to one side, my breathing shifts differently than when I twist to the other side. And then back in toward the middle. All right. So now we're going to do some breathing exercises. And this is one of the things I also learned from Mr. Iyengar, is that you spend the vast majority of your time breathing, trusting your body. And then you do a little bit of deep breathing. A little dose goes a long way. So we're going to use two cues for the breathing. So the first cue, exhale, front ribs, lower ribs, move down and together. Let's do a few breaths with that exhale as the primary focus. Knit, connect. So the second cue is not in replacement of or substitution for, in addition to. Your lower ribs, back ribs, when you inhale, broaden them. Now, it's not a whole lot. It's not like it's inches. It's more of a felt sense at your lower back ribs when you inhale, broaden. And maintaining, sustaining that broadening through the whole duration of the in-breath. Now let's put those together. Exhale, knit. Inhale, broaden lower back rib. Now a little bit deeper breathing. Now, another thing I really appreciated about Iyengar's teaching of the breath, or in Sanskrit, pranayama, is he didn't get wrapped up in that idea that you shouldn't breathe into your chest. Thankfully, he recognized that that was a really flawed instruction. That's one of the reasons why I really like this exhale cue, inhale cue. Is that it naturally merges the contribution of the diaphragm in the rib cage. This suggests that breathing should not include the ribs, should not occur in the chest. It's just straight up nonsense. So let's take a few more breaths, breathing where your lungs are. Now, this is not your natural breath, is it? And to some small extent, there's a little bit of a tension in your system right now because your body is wanting to breathe one way and you're breathing another way. Now, with the next out breath, let go of these breathing techniques. Hand the control back from your brain to your body. And breath by breath, notice the shifts and adjustments that your body makes. To bring you back to homeostasis. In future classes, we'll talk more about the physiology of the breath. And how in moderation, doing some deep breathing can usefully and beneficially pull you out of balance. And then once you let go of the deep, slow breathing, then your body will come back to a greater degree of balance. If there's any single takeaway, trust your body. It knows how to breathe. So our practice can be witnessing the intelligence that is embedded in your body through the practice of observing your breath as it is. So that's about our time here today. We really appreciate you all coming by. And I saw some questions were in the chat. Have they been answered? Yeah. Ah, yeah. So a question came up, and I think it was in the context of the sidekicks, but maybe it was in the context also of the one-legged roll-up, is how to keep that lower leg from grabbing. And there's a couple ways that I'll cue doing so, is that sometimes I'll cue initiating the rolling up from the back of my head. And then that sense of, like we're working on the mini crunch together, is that lengthening as you come up in the mini crunch, and think in terms of that same lengthening as you roll up into the one-legged roll up. So that's one technique, is to shift the focus. Another technique is to think in terms of keeping those lower ribs down as long as you can and come up and over those lower ribs, because most of the time when the lower ribs are down, the hip flexors stay released. So that can be another technique. In the context of the side legs, if I find that I'm gripping in my hip flexors, I'll sometimes think about the lower leg pressing down into the ground. Use the lower leg pressing down in order to lift the upper leg up. And sometimes I find that releases hip flexors. A great question. Anybody else? Yeah, yeah. So an observation that laying on one side, breathing felt different than laying on the other side. And that was related to the point in doing the twist to one side, the twist to the other side, is that inside our body, we're not symmetric. One lung is bigger, one lung is smaller. The liver is a very large organ. It's a very heavy organ. It's on one side, but not on the other side. And so it's normal and it's natural that when you do something to one side and then do the same thing to the other side, that the breathing may or may not be the same. Or it may feel like the breathing is more labored on one side than it is on the other side, which is often related to the inner organs. So, uh, brief answer is typically nothing to worry about. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And if you're not already, please consider joining our community through Pilates on Harrison. And we have over 20 classes a week. And if you like what you're seeing here, there's a whole lot more of it on our channel. Thanks so much.